For reasons that will become obvious, I don't get asked to speak very often. But if I say anything that offends you, blame Sally, because she asked me. And obviously nothing that you're going to hear from me is holy writ. And if anybody seriously disagrees or wants to make a comment, don't hesitate to raise your hand. Unfortunately, I do not have a lot of really interesting, funny, drunken adventures. When I drank, I got drunk pretty quick. And when I got drunk, I got a little crazy, but then I got sleepy. You know. I tore up families and lost jobs and stuff like that, but that's not very funny. And so I don't have, a very good drunkalogue. The truth of it is that the character defects I have now I had before I started drinking. I tend to be a truant, kind of a dropout. I guess today it would be a slacker, right? And when I was being a slacker at 14 or 15 or even in college and didn't want to study and dope off, I could go to a movie or chase a girl or something like that. But when I was 24 or 5 and I was laying out my own serious money to go to law school, and I had a wife and 2 kids to support, and I still was going to the movies instead of studying, it got kind of insupportable. And boy, alcohol helped a lot then. Because, after law school, it was over by noon. I could go have lunch, 6 or 8 beers and a little pizza, and then fill up my attaché case with beer and go to the movies. And, dope off. And that's basically what I did until I was 30. I came out from New York here, and it didn't get a whole lot better. It was a pretty good geographic. You can't go much further in the continental United States. Hawaii wasn't a state then. I had gone to a few AA meetings in New York, and I knew quite a bit about AA because my father had been a member. And when he was a member, it was like 1941 or 42, so the guys we read about, like Dr. Silkworth and Bill Wilson and so forth, were guys that he knew. It was AA was new and kind of spooky and groovy and anonymous. And it was. I had a very positive opinion of it. The only problem with it that I could see is that it seemed to work, and if I started going seriously, I would probably quit drinking. And I wasn't really prepared to do that, although I was continuing to tear my life apart. But I went to AA enough in the 60s to get some fairly decent periods of sobriety. I got 23 months once. Interesting how I ended that period of sobriety. I was driving back from Sacramento alone, coming from a political meeting, and coming up to L.A., and I wasn't due in San Diego until noon the next day. You get the picture? I had a window of opportunity. And in those days, this was 1964, I guess, topless bars were just getting started. So I thought I owed it to do a little sociological investigation. So I pulled into a place on Sunset Boulevard and went in, and the gal came up and asked what I wanted, 2 drink minimum. And, I'm remembering I got change back from a $5 bill. Boy, that's a long time ago after buying 2 drinks. And what I ordered was what I used to order with my political buddies, scotch and soda, but don't mix it. And I'd drink the soda and turn around. Somebody at the table would be drinking scotch. I'd give them a shooter. It was known I didn't drink. But when this girl brought the 2 drinks back, she'd missed the drink. She'd mixed the drink, right? I reached down, picked up one of the glasses, took a long pull on it, gave her the $5, ordered 2 more drinks, and said, I'll be right back. Because immediately it clicked in. It's 5 minutes after 12 at night. There's a liquor store across the street. I hadn't even noticed that I noticed it. And I'm not going to get the job done in this place by 2 o'clock, so I better get a bottle of scotch and put it in the trunk, right? Just like that. About 4 years later, I was up to 15 months, another period of sobriety, and I was at a place that used to be down at Pacific Beach called the Jail. You did a lot of dancing and stuff. And they didn't have anything, I guess, but a beer license. So when they came around, they asked me whether I wanted a Budweiser or a Champagne. And in my ignorance, I ordered a Champagne, not realizing it was alcoholic. And I poured myself half a glass, took a sip, and said, "That's alcohol. I'm not going to make the mistake I made 4 years ago," right? So in the whole course of an evening, I drank just about half a glass of this stuff. Of course, by 3 months later, I was tearing the world apart again and tearing my life apart. Then I had a lucky break. I was diagnosed as a manic depressive. And that meant that, see, I wasn't an alcoholic, I was a manic depressive. And this alcohol that I was using was a pretty good medicine if you're manic. It depresses you, right? Brings you down. And that's how I threw away the later part of the 60s and into the 70s. I couldn't get the disease concept of alcoholism into my head because it seemed so logical to me. I would be living on a nice condominium over La Costa or someplace and going to school up in USC. And I would have been 3 months or 6 months or whatever months sober. And then I would decide, today's the day. I'd make some excuse to my nice wife why I wouldn't be back until tomorrow. And instead of driving to L.A., I would go down. There's a motel. It's still down there on the beach, right next to the Six Sex Club, that has a liquor store right in the parking lot. So I'd check into a room. I'd put 2 gallons of beer in the icebox and another gallon under my bed, get a couple of magazines, get one of those sandwiches, that you buy at a liquor store, and put it on the top of the television to let it thaw, and settle down to 3 or 4 days of normal social drinking. But it was so clear to me. I remembered clearly making this decision. I wasn't drunk. I wasn't under the influence of alcohol. I just wanted to take a little time off to think it over, and have a few drinks and not be under the pressures of the world. I was making a decision, except what I didn't realize that there's 2 components to the disease. There's the physical allergy, and God knows I have that. But then there's the mental obsession, which kept telling me that this time will not be like the last 900 times. This time will be different. And so I bumped along with almost maddening periods of sobriety. I drove everybody around me crazy because it looked like I was about to break over into sobriety, but I didn't for years. Finally, I kind of got lucky. I got my first 502, and I promised to go to a couple of AA meetings, which was no strain. I was going to them anyway. And I got called out by someone who obviously loved me that said if I kept drinking it would be over. And I was not sure I could survive alone if I was drinking. And I went to these new meetings, and I heard something that I had not heard before. And it was something very simple. I was supposed to take the 12 steps. Not that there were 12 steps. I knew there were. I read the big book when I was 12, Could I discuss the 12 steps? You should have listened to me. Knew more about them then than I know now. Did I ever take the 12 steps? I never even heard that I personally, Roger Hanafin, was supposed to take the 12 steps, right? I took the 12 steps, and I've been sober over 25 years. It was almost that simple. Of course, I lied to myself a little bit coming in. There was a book around in those days that had a certain vogue called Seven Sinners. I don't know if anybody of you remember it. It was an alternate treatment of alcoholics, and of course it's long since been discredited and disappeared, like most treatments of alcoholism are. But this guy said that we were substituting meetings for our addiction to meetings for our addiction to alcohol. We shouldn't give up drinking forever. We should simply go under a rigorous 2-year program of spiritual, mental, and physical development and then have a drink. Right? So I thought this out and I said, well, look, I haven't quite gotten into the 2 years of spiritual development yet, but let's say I do, and then in 2 years I can have a drink, and then the next year I'll have 1 drink a month, and the next year I'll have maybe 1 drink a week, and then the next year 1 drink tops a day, and by then I'll be a normal social drinker. You know, these people that plan their drinks 7 years in advance, right? So about 7 months into this period of sobriety, which is now over 25 years ago, I was at a meeting and I remembered that I had had this lunatic scheme in mind when I came aboard. And I hadn't thought about it in a couple months. And I realized then that there was nothing that the outside world could give me but in the ability to have a drink, if indeed it were possible, that would compensate for the lack of, for losing my brothers and sisters on the program. The people that I counted on a daily and a weekly basis. Not only to not drink, even then that was almost the least of that. To be my brothers and sisters of kind of an adventure, trying to live some kind of a decent life. So, that's my drunkalogue, so to speak. The rest of what I have to say is how it is to be sober for a fairly long period of time. And then, of course, I'll give you great wisdom, at the last 5 minutes to tell you. We all talk about how it works. I don't know any more how it works than I did 25 or 40 years ago. I do observe carefully when it works. It seems to work when I, or anybody I know fairly well, goes to meetings regularly, has taken the 12 steps, does what he is asked to do, and at least tries to engender in himself a feeling of gratitude. Now, the gratitude is the hard part. I mean, for the first 8 or 10 years, if you told me the topic of a meeting was gratitude, I wanted to either go out the door or throw up, because I was not grateful. I mean, I was grateful I was alive, and that was about it. But over the years, I've asked people, not only of my generation, but my parents' generation, do they know anybody who was regularly going to the meetings, was 2 years sober, had taken the steps, and did what people in the program asked him to do, that found it necessary to go out and start drinking again? And the answer is almost universally no. I don't know anybody like that. I don't think I know anybody who knows anybody like that. That's not when it works. So if that's when it works, I don't care how it works. I just want to stay in the when. And that's not hard. Now, one of our speakers said that this is a hard program. I know what he means, and I'm not disagreeing with him exactly, but it's the easiest damn thing I've ever done. Waking up in a phone booth at 3 o'clock in the morning with no money in your pocket, that's hard, Seeing the red lights flashing in your rear view mirror when you know you're drunk and you've got a milk carton full of scotch and ice cubes standing next to you, that's hard. Losing jobs and disappointing your parents, your wife, your kids, that's hard. This stuff, what? Go to a few meetings a week? Give a shot at the 12 steps once in a while, Somebody says, let's make a 12-step call, or won't you do the coffee this is 6 months or something like that? You do it. Big deal. That's not hard. You know what's hard? If we were drinking right now, and I saw all those hands up, we're a bunch of alcoholics, right? First of all, what's the logical odds against, what do we got, 100 people or something here, 100, something like that? If we're all alcoholics, what the hell are we doing here on Saturday night? I mean, come on. What are the mathematical odds against that? And you know what you would have to do tomorrow if you were still drinking? You'd have to get up with a terrible hangover after Saturday night, right? Make Bloody Marys and watch a Charger game. Now, is there any worse punishment than that, you know? So, what it came down to for me, and the only thing I can offer you or anybody I ever make a 12-step call on or talk to, is my absolute conviction that the program works, that here we stay alive and outside we die. Now, the guys that I drank with are long since dead. Long since dead. The last one of them, my older brother, died at 60, and he was a tough guy. Most of us that drank like I drank, I don't know how you guys drank, ladies, but the guys that drank like I did had a real hard time making it out of their 40s. Maybe you younger people have a few more rounds to go. But when I was in my 40s, I didn't have any more rounds to go. So this program keeps me alive. And every time I would go out on those slips over that long 14-year period, we were dying out there. My buddies were dying out there. And I would come back to the meetings, and you'd all be alive. And you'd smile a little bit occasionally, you know. And you'd show up on time and all kinds of weird stuff. And then I'd go back out to where the people were dying. Because that's what we got. We got a fatal disease that we're arresting by using the program. Talking about the steps for a minute, as I read the old literature, the early guys in AA, the people in Ohio, they took the first 3 steps before they were allowed to go to a meeting. And it was presumed they'd take the other 9 within a few weeks or a few months. When I hear somebody say, you know, I've only been sober 2.5 years, but I'm beginning to think about maybe picking somebody who might be the person that I'd think about giving my 4th step to that I haven't written yet. I think, uh-oh, this guy or lady may stay sober for the next 20 years. I don't know. I'm not going to put the curse on anybody, but this person is really making it hard for themselves. When I finally got through my head that I was supposed to take the 12 steps, I sat down in an afternoon on some pieces of scratch paper, wrote them out, called a guy, said, will you be my sponsor? He said, sure. I said, I've got my 4th step. He said, great, come on over. I went over, read it to him. He said, that doesn't sound so bad. And then he left for L.A., and I haven't seen him since. Did I do it right? No. You know, did I get advice and counsel from my sponsor? No kidding. I haven't seen the guy since. Right? But did I do the 12 steps as best I could at that time in my development? Yeah. Have I done them since? I hope to shout I have. And I do them, I hope, a little bit better as I go along. But even with that, I get more spiritual ideas and guidance and do more serious spiritual thinking sitting in AA meetings and listening to you guys than I do at any other time. My spiritual program is a long way from being the greatest. But I find that I can draw tremendous strength from my brothers and sisters. As they grow, Because if they're growing, maybe I'm growing. As they say things, maybe I say, hot damn, I sure agree with that. But even almost more important, when somebody says something that I really disagree with, and my stomach turns over once to say, oh, that guy, he doesn't, she doesn't. Oh boy, that's a good thing for me to happen to me, because if I'm upset by something that's part of your program, right, that you're sharing with me, I better take a good look at my program. Right? Is something getting me there? That doesn't mean you're right. But you're hitting me at a spot where I need some work, or else I wouldn't get so darn upset. So, what else do we have? Experience, strength. Oh, yeah, my strength comes from the program and you guys and the working of the program. The spiritual part of the program, I admit to being not as fully developed as I presumed it would be after almost 26 years of sobriety. I thought if you had 25 years of sobriety, hell, if you had 10 years of sobriety, which was pretty rare around here 15 years ago, when you came into meetings, you would probably come in about 3 inches off the ground and glowing faintly, you know. And at the end of the meeting, the leader would call on you to summarize everything and tell how it really is, you know. And damn it, after all these years, and I haven't made guru status yet, nor do I intend to, thank God. My spiritual program revolves around a literal translation of my higher power, which to me means the part of my brain that isn't out to get me. And that's the part I want to listen to. And then about 10 years ago or 15, I was down at Swami's, which I've only been to once, but a guy was talking, and he talked about the God as God the companion. And so I kind of made up a strange and idiosyncratic higher power. Me, 97% perfect. And I talk to him sometimes. That person I envisioned myself to be if I were the 97% Roger instead of the 50 or 60% Roger you see before you in everyday life. See, I don't want him to be 100% perfect because then he wouldn't understand me at all. Now, obviously, this higher power will help absolutely nobody but me. But it does show something that I think is important. Let's put it this way. If we had one of these spirit pictures, you know, photographs where you see spirits in them, and we had this spirit picture of Bill Wilson writing the 12 steps, right? And looming over him, invisibly inspiring him, was, now fill in your favorite higher power, right? Jesus, Jehovah, Moses, Mohammed, whatever. So we would have absolutely scientific photographic evidence that our steps are divinely inspired. What difference would it make if we weren't following the steps? See, it's what we do. We're sober because we don't drink. We're happier in our sobriety, I think, at least partly because we do the steps. It doesn't seem like a big mystery to me. And there I lose something, I know, because the spiritual side that many of you have, that I haven't, and some of you shared with me, is extremely attractive, and maybe I'll develop into it. I certainly haven't shut down. But the main thing, I think, for me has been to have a higher power, even one so weakly constructed as mine, and then use him. Because the best higher power in the world is like the best sponsor in the world. If you never call the son of a gun, you know, it's not much use having a sponsor. Incidentally, we're talking about the steps and sponsors. I'm one of the people I know that has an absolute 100% success record as a sponsor. And believe it or not, 100% success record on 12-step calls. because none of those people I've ever sponsored or I've ever called on has ever gotten me drunk. 100% success. Because we got to be clear who we're doing this for, you know. We're doing it for us. And I'll tell you a story which has the great advantage of being true. When I went to my first meeting in New York in 1960, a couple days later, with 3 days of sobriety, I was riding the New York subway. I was at 14th Street going uptown. A guy got on the subway car that I knew from my childhood. He'd get on at 14th Street. He got off at 23rd Street. One stop, right? Our conversation didn't last as long as it tells me to take it. How are you doing, Raj? Nice to see you, Tommy. How are things going with you? Well, you know, Tom, I found out that I'm an alcoholic. Really? I didn't know you even drank. Well, yeah, it's given me a lot of trouble, and I've started to go to AA meetings. Do you think that stuff really works? It looks like it's going to. You know, I'm having trouble like that, too. Maybe I should try it. Off at 23rd Street, hasn't had a drink in 40 years. 40 years, right? See, it's not how well we do the steps, I don't think. It's that we do the steps. If I had been the least bit bashful about this guy, I wouldn't have said a word. Now, whether that pushed him over or not, but I knew it was a new idea to him, you know. So I'm pretty open about what secret organization I belong to. And I'm pretty quick to identify myself to people who I think a word might help. What do I get out of this? Sometimes some hostile looks. You know, mind your own business kind of looks, or, oh, you poor damn drunk, you must be weak to need something like that, you know. That's okay. Because there's probably somebody else there besides my old friend Tommy that is maybe recognize the fact that I'm a recovering alcoholic and maybe gets a little glimmer to the fact that the program is the salvation for so many of us. But it's not the only salvation for us. That's what our leaders said when they wrote the book and said we only know a little. I mean, some people did get sober before 1935, right? All alcoholics didn't die drunk before Bill Wilson showed them this way to do it. So there are other ways. And the fact that we don't fight anybody about the other ways, I think, is one of the reasons that we're still around when an awful lot of ideas have gone a-glimmering. Humility is one of the things that Bill talked about a lot, probably because he didn't have very much of it, as he would certainly admit to you. I think it can be a real opening for, well, it's been a real opening for me because I'm so damn arrogant naturally. To try to work towards a little bit of humility is very difficult for me, but quite useful for me. I get nervous sometimes when I hear my AA brothers and sisters talk about normies that don't have a program. Yeah, my wife, the problem with her is she doesn't have a program. She spent all her time raising my 11 kids and working at 3 jobs and putting up with me, and she hasn't found time to have the spiritual way of life that I'm working on here at AA. Yeah. Maybe I better find a blonde, you know, who probably will be more spiritual, you know. It's easy to us when we feel so blessed and so lucky to get a little bit carried away. It's like when you go to Las Vegas. You go down, you see all those machines, you put in $1, you pull the thing, $25 come up. Do you think, oh boy, I'm lucky? Not a minute of it. You think, wasn't I smart to pick that machine? That's the one that paid off. Actually, AA is kind of like a slot machine, too. See, I always used to hate these people that said to me when I went to school or got a job or joined something, you get out of it what you put into it. I mean, it's a big deal, you know. I want an edge. I'm from New York. I don't want to get what I put in, you know. But AA is like you're over at Caesar's Palace and in the back somewhere they've still got a nickel machine. You put the nickel in, you pull it, you hit the maximum jackpot, and they're all silver dollars. Because that's the way AA has been for me. The little bit that I put in has to come rolling back with such fabulous benefits. And it ain't because I'm smart. I was just smart enough to figure out that I had a pretty good chance of living to a reasonably decent age here, and I would die out there. Period. It's fatal. And if you're not convinced of that because you're 20 or 30 or even 40, give it a little bit more time. It'll get you. It gets most of us. And we don't go easy either, you know. The last 5 or 10 or 15 years are usually years of misery and depression and defeat. And who the hell needs that? Because this is where we get some life. And if I stay close, I've got a real good chance. And when times get tough for me, when things are not going right, I reach out and pick up the program and take like a blanket, pull it right up under my chin, start going to more meetings, start talking to more people, start reading more stuff. When I need it, it's here. The fault of my program almost surely is when I'm feeling real good, I tend to slack off, and that's got to be dumb. This is the easiest thing I've ever done. And the benefit reward for the little bit that I do.
If you're having a hard time selling that old car or truck, forget the hassle. Donate your vehicle.
I think any of you who've been here any more than just that brief period where you're hanging on day to day, you know what I'm talking about. Thanks a lot.